College football week 2 is upon us. I'm your host, Matt Hicks, the FF Educator, joined by my co-host, John Lobb, the Gridiron Scholar, back at it to preview another fantastic week of college football. We have marvelous matchups, the best matchups of the week, our best bets, our DFS plays, our sleepers, all of that coming at you here. Want to make sure folks know, if you're watching on YouTube, make sure to give the video a like, subscribe. We're doing awesome numbers for college fantasy football views, so help us out. Drop a comment. All those things are fantastic. And make sure you're heading on over to patreon.com/rookiebigboard and checking out all the great resources. Get in the Discord, chop it up with me and John. But we have no more time to waste because we are jumping right into a fantastic week 2 slate here, starting with our marvelous matchup segment. Fantastic. So with marvelous matchups here, we are looking at the 6 best college fantasy football matchups of the week. Not the best matchups of the week, but the most college fantasy football potential. We will start with USC at Stanford, a classic rivalry, 67.5 over under. If you had told me and John a year ago, that the over under was going to be 67.5 for USC Stanford, and that was going to be the game of the week in terms of points here, we would have laughed at you. But USC is a revitalized offense with Caleb Williams playing quarterback. We have Travis Dye coming over from Oregon playing running back here. A slew of wide receiver weapons highlighted by Jordan Addison. And on the other side of the ball, a few key pieces for the Cardinal. You have E.J. Smith, the running back, and Tanner McKee, the quarterback. It's an over-under of 67.5. And for folks paying attention here, USC is laying 8.5. John, that's the overview of the matchup. But why don't you fill in the details for us?
Matt, and we also want to say, we know Alabama, Texas aren't in the slate. Alabama's a 20-point favorite. We try to keep the games under 10. So that's why you won't hear us. And everyone knows who to play basically on those teams. So USC, Stanford, this is the Lincoln Riley effect. USC, after one game, Matt, everyone's jumping on board on that offense. Caleb Williams is a fantasy stud. I'm still playing Travis Dye after a poor game. The game script got away. I think USC scored 2 defensive touchdowns, Matt. There was no reason to play Travis Dye. Raleek Brown, the freshman, he had significant playing time for a freshman in his first game ever. And Matt, he looked good.
Yeah.
Viewers, Raleek Brown is a Devi Dynasty asset. He's a very interesting running back, but I think this is a Travis Dye game, not a Raleek Brown game. Wide receivers, we know how great Jordan Addison is. My friends, did you watch the game? How smooth was he one-on-one? Man, he is almost impossible with his double moves. Matt, images of Stephon Diggs was dancing through my head. He was so good with his feet, gaining separation and slipping away. Great. Brendan Rice is an interesting player. You have Mario Williams. I love the USC offense. But really, this is about the Stanford Cardinal. If you want a fantasy option, Matt, here we go. E.J. Smith, Matt. I don't know when I've been so excited. First touch of the game, 87-yard touchdown. I was like, yeah, baby. I got him
2 years for that. We've been waiting for that E.J. Smith action.
All over the place. But you know what, Matt? I looked at it more and more. It was the offensive line. Yes, he ran well. But you know what? The offensive line blocked it up well. That's the key to me. If Stanford can continue to play well in the front 5, E.J. Smith will be productive. Tanner McKee, a very interesting player. The challenge with him, Matt, is you need the 4 touchdowns to smash. He's not a player who's going to give you the rushing upside. You might get lucky with a 1-yard plunge, but he's not getting a 30-yard touchdown. But he's interesting. We're going to have to watch him throughout the season. Benjamin Yorosek, I look for a bounce back here. He didn't have a great opening week. 67.5 is college fantasy football gold, Matt. And then Elijah Higgins. These are players that we're going to watch. They're 8.5-point dogs. I like the passing game here if you're desperate. Can't wait to see this game, Matt.
I can't wait to see our next game, John. I'll be there in person in Pittsburgh as the Panthers take on my Tennessee Vols. Over under here is 67. I am ready to sing Rocky Top. I'm ready to scream. Tennessee's going to lay 6 points. John, we saw a real fantastic tease of Hendon Hooker against Ball State. Tennessee showed us no more than they had to, but we had rushing touchdowns from Hendon Hooker. We had passing touchdowns from Hendon Hooker. We had Cedric Tillman on the receiving end of those. And we also had a combination of Jalen Hyatt, the wide receiver we've been waiting for a little while, and Brew McCoy, the USC transfer. Both of those guys are kind of fighting right now, splitting that quote-unquote Velus Jones Jr. role from last year. It'll be interesting to see how both those guys play out, but we'll talk a little bit more about that in the DFS segment. On the opposite side of this game, Pitt is coming off of an electric Week 1 victory against West Virginia, but Keaton Slovis looked okay. We had an early running back injury, so we're still kind of unsure what that running back room looks like. But Kanata Mumford did look good, not a ton of volume, but the Toledo transfer looked really good as well.
Matt, it was the first time that I can say with the starting quarterback with over 30 points in Hendon Hooker, you were a little bit disappointed because I think he had 30 by like halftime, basically.
It was an easy 30, too.
Easy 30. And I didn't even think he played great. I think his ceiling, he could still play better. He looked a little rusty at times. Wasn't perfect. And then Joe Milton came in. I'm like, I'll take the 30. I got to walk away. It is what it is.
John's the only one who's going to sit here and complain about an easy 30 Week 1.
Exactly. Jabari Small looked very good. I think he's now a flex starter nearly every week in the Volunteers' high-powered offense. Tillman, we were probably a little bit disappointed, but you know what? The fantasy points are going to be there. It just wasn't on that night. You mentioned it. Jalen Hyatt looked fantastic. He's a sneaky. We might get 3 receivers in this team. And you hinted at Brew McCoy. And shout out to my friend Chris K on the Burning the Red Shirt podcast. He's been all in on Brew McCoy all year, and he came through. It just took him a while to get approved to play by the NCAA. And the Pitt Panthers. Man, Matt, watching Keaton Slovis, I'm going to get gray hair, brother. I can't watch too many of these Pittsburgh games. He can look so good at times, then other times you're just like, what are you doing? And Matt, I can't believe he hasn't gotten a better command of the pocket. He looked so bad moving around sometimes in the pocket. That's it. His NFL career. When you have these defensive linemen and linebackers crashing in the NFL, Matt, if you're not calm in the pocket, you're just done. Right. Keaton Slovis, love you, brother. You're not an NFL quarterback. At running back, we might have seen a change in the guard. Rodney Hampton looked very good, but he's questionable. So, and college is very frustrating, everyone. You don't get injury reports like you do in the NFL. You can pick them up. I'm not sure if I'm going to play them. And Jared Wayne and Kanata Munfield, we wanted more out of Kanata Munfield, but he was heavily targeted, just wasn't very efficient. Jared Wayne, I thought he looked good with targets. The question mark is Gavin Bartholomew. Matt, what happened in Week 1? I'm going to be watching very closely. We need some targets for that young man.
All right, next up here, the red-hot 2-0 Vanderbilt Commodores will host Wake Forest, who now has Sam Hartman back from the undisclosed medical injury. It looks like he didn't miss a significant amount of time. So folks who drafted Sam Hartman early in the offseason are definitely happy about that. It's going to be a really interesting matchup, John. You look on the Vanderbilt side, and Mike Wright has shocked many folks. We were surprised at first when he won the camp battle, but since then we have learned why. In 2 matchups, Mike Wright, 31 for 50 with 391 yards, 6 touchdowns, no interceptions. And perhaps even more importantly, he's leading the Commodores in rushing, 247 yards on the ground and 4 touchdowns. The over-under of this game is 65.5, and Wake is laying 12.5, but Vanderbilt's going to be competitive, and they're going to push that score up. On the other side of the ball, I mentioned it is Sam Hartman coming back. The Deacon Demons will be really excited about that. And they do kind of have a rotation of running backs going as well with Christian Turner and Justice Ellison. It'll be interesting to see if they lean more into Christian Turner as we go. And a combination here of wide receivers. A.T. Perry, not so great, 3 for 47 in the first week. He was a high draft pick, but hopefully that chemistry with Sam Hartman is what pushes him back up over Donovan Green and Taylor Morin, who both had 5 receptions in their week 1 victory.
Matt, I am so happy for the young man, Sam Hartman, that he's back. He made it back a lot faster than reports indicated. I think many of us were worried about him as a young man and his future. This is good news that he's coming back on the field. It's great news for college fantasy football, but I don't want to separate the young man is more important than college fantasy football. But I am happy. You mentioned it. Let's unlock A.T. Perry and Donovan Green this week, everyone. Mitch Griffin's played well. I was surprised. He played better than I thought. But his future is 2023 and possibly beyond. We want Sam Hartman at the controls of this offense. This over-under, this line was Wake minus, I think, 6.5, 7.5. It's increased to 12.5 as of 4 o'clock this afternoon. I would not be surprised if it goes up a little bit more. But put in all the Wake Forest pass catchers and Hartman. Do not worry about playing Hartman. Matt, if the coaching staff and the medical staff say that he's good to go, I'm going to trust them.
Absolutely.
He's in my lineups. I can't worry about it. And for everyone who got a late value on Sam Hartman, I know he went in the 13th round of our Kings Classic draft.
Yeah.
Dwight Peebles, start him. You hit gold with them that late.
Yeah, and it's not like it's, and we don't know the injury, but it's not like it's a bum hammy or something that we expect to be lingering, right?
Yes. And there's no, I believe, as an educator, there's no way the coaching staff and the medical staff is putting him in unless he's able to go 100%. Exactly. And he knows his offense. So he didn't need ramp up time. So I'm very good with this. The question now is Mike Wright. I played him in DFS last week. I picked him up on 3 of my college fantasy football teams. Played him in 2 leagues. I've seen this, Matt, too much. Forget about what you think of the Commodores, everyone. It doesn't matter. In college fantasy football, we have an uber athlete. It doesn't matter if he can throw or what his offense looks like. This is an incredibly talented young man whose upside, you said he leads the team in rushing, right, Matt?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
That is absolute fantasy gold. It doesn't matter. As long as he's healthy and he's on the field, Mike Wright is a legitimate fantasy starter in 2 quarterback leagues. My Huskies outside are having fun on the deck. Sorry about that, everyone. Play Mike Wright. I love him here. Matt, who do we got for the next one?
All right, coming up next here, it's the Tar Heels are heading to Georgia State. This is a tricky one, John. It's a 64-point over-under. UNC is laying 7.5, but Georgia State has been competitive against Power 5 programs in the past. North Carolina just eked past App State, another strong Group of 5 team, and they didn't look great against FAMU the first week either. North Carolina may still be without Josh Downs. We haven't gotten official word on that. At least I have not seen that come across. But leading the way is an outstanding Drake May, picking up right where Sam Howell left off. 53 for 73, 646 yards, 9 touchdowns to 0 interceptions. And again, for college fantasy football, 131 rushing yards and a touchdown. The question's going to be, do you dare step into this running back room? It looked like Hampton was the clear guy coming out of week 1, but Petaway got a ton of run week 2. And so it seems like it might be a little bit of more of a committee than we were hoped for. But if you want to dig down to wide receiver, if Josh Downs is out, J.J. Jones stood out last week, 7 receptions, 100 yards through the first 2 games, and he has found the end zone. But John, through the first 2 weeks, they have 7 different players that have caught receptions. That's a lot of spreading the ball around, which is dangerous for CFF. On the Georgia State side, John, I'll let you decide if you find something you like, but there's nothing that I like on that side for fantasy purposes.
When we got a 64 over under, it made me look, Matt. And then I realized, you know what it is? that Tar Heels defense is awful.
Yeah.
And how good was that fourth quarter of North Carolina Appalachian State? That was completely insanity, everyone. I loved it. Talking about pass catchers. Bryson Nesbitt, the tight end. When I last looked at roster ownership, everyone, he was widely available in leagues. I picked him up and played him in one league last week, and I believe he's had back-to-back games in PPR scoring formats of over 13 points. Brian Nesbitt is a very good tight end. There were between beat reporters and observers, people were talking about Nesbitt in the summer, and he's really shown us what he can be. I agree. We want Josh Downs on the field very much, Matt. You're right, J.J. Jones was the best out there, but let's hope Downs gets back. I'm not going to start another North Carolina running back until we get some clarity in this backfield. I can't do it. It's too up and down. Drake May, he's now a must start, at least for the foreseeable future. I went to Georgia State. I'm not starting a wide receiver running back, Matt, but I will start, if you're desperate, quarterback Darren Granger. He's a dual threat sophomore. He has incredible upside. He is a home underdog here. I love Darren Granger. If you're desperate at quarterback, he's the only one I'm looking at.
All right, John. Houston, Texas Tech is our next one here. Over under 63. Texas Tech laying 3.5. Now, I won't really get into Houston because I will be talking about Houston again this week when it comes to DFS, but I will briefly touch on Texas Tech here. Donovan Smith looks to be the quarterback after Tyler Shuck went down with an early game injury in week 1. Donovan Smith is a dual athlete. He didn't rush a ton last week in terms of net yardage, but he does have that playmaking ability. He did pass 14 for 16 with 4 touchdowns and no interceptions last week. And then it's a little bit of a split here at the running back side of the ball. Taj Brooks and SaRodorick Thompson, unfortunately splitting almost equally, but Brooks did get the 3 touchdowns. So if you're interested in a flex play or a flyer play, Taj Brooks could be your pick there. And then Miles Price, the wide receiver, not too exciting from him. 3 for 39 week 1. He was a really high second, third round CFF pick this offseason. So we're hoping for a big bounce back from Miles Price this week so we don't have to get too nervous about him.
First, I want to apologize. I'm home alone, and my wife and my daughter and my mom are out shopping, and the dogs are alone. So I apologize, everyone. I got no one to help us calm them down, but they're calm for now. So thank you for listening. You know, when you have 3 dogs and a puppy, he's one of them. Sometimes they get a little excited. Texas Tech, you mentioned Miles Price. Matt, you got to play him. You spent second or third round draft capital on him. You've got to play him. Don't bench him, everyone. The other wide receiver, I'm going to talk about him later in the show. The one I've been heavily invested in. I've been playing him. He's been coming through. If you haven't noticed, everyone, Taj Brooks played very well last week. He was a viable fantasy asset. You've got to look at him and think about him in a high over-under as a flex running back. And this week, Donovan Smith is taking over for Tyler Shuck. Tyler Shuck cannot stay on the field, Matt. He didn't even make it through the first game for the Red Raiders this season. I love this stat for Donovan Smith, and you've heard me, Matt. You're my partner. We love the chat. He has 11-2 touchdown to interception ratio in the 2 seasons he's been for the Red Raiders. This is a Zach Kitley offense. If you got him, start him. Don't give up on Miles Price yet. On the Houston side, Matt, I've heard no one, or very few. Man, that Houston game versus UTSA was unfreaking believable. The fourth quarter in the overtime, man, I was worried about my fantasy points in DFS because Clayton Tune wasn't playing well in the first half. Third quarter, he didn't get off. Then all of a sudden, Houston got hot. UTS was playing well. We got those extra fantasy points in the overtime. If you got Clayton Tune, he is a must start. Not sure if I'm going into this Houston Cougars backfield. And right now, I feel confident in one Houston wide receiver, Matt. That is Nathaniel Dell. His numbers don't look great. He scored twice. Man, I don't know why he wasn't targeted more. I was very disappointed in Matthew Golden. He dropped 2 passes. His numbers should have been better. 2 big passes, and they kind of went away from him. Let's see how this Cougars passing game develops. But there's a lot of goodness on that field.
All right, John. Northern Illinois at Tulsa finishes up our slate, 62.5 over-under. Tulsa laying 6 here in this game. I'll let you briefly go ahead and give an overview before we jump into our sleepers of the week.
Yeah, so first I'm going to start with Tulsa. They're at home. They're a big favorite. Davis Brin is a very interesting quarterback that we've got to look out for. I'm not sure if I'm ready to start him again because he's wildly inconsistent, Matt. But Davis Brin is a player that I'm going to be watching closely to see how he improves and how he plays this week. On the running back, they rotate the Hurricane. Too many players in the backfield. So I think I'm going to stay away from that one also in the backfield. And then I'll talk about a wide receiver that I like very much later on. Northern Illinois side, Rocky Lombardi is an interesting quarterback, but in general, he is a runner more than a thrower. What we're looking for is both running backs for the Huskies, Matt. Harrison Whaley and Ontario Brown are very good options for Northern Illinois. I'm not sure if I like any of the wide receivers or the tight end for the Huskies at this point, Matt. That's our marvelous matchups for the week, everyone.
All right, here we go. Fantastic 4 sleepers where we break down 4 players you may not be thinking about, may not be at the top of your radar, but should be. John, we'll start here with your fantastic 4 sleepers. You have quarterback Daniel Richardson out of CMU, running back Jaden Ott out of Cal, wide receiver Trayshawn Holden from Alabama, and Reese White out of Coastal Carolina, the running back in your flex.
If you didn't notice, Daniel Richardson put up a great game, and it was shockingly against Oklahoma State on the road, Matt. Daniel Richardson scored, depending on your scoring system, between 37 and 41 fantasy points. He threw for 424 yards and 4 touchdowns. I mean, are the Cowboys that bad? I mean, I say to myself, that is shocking against the MAC team at home. This week, Daniel Richardson plays South Alabama. If you've got Daniel Richardson or he's available on your waiver wire, put Daniel Richardson into your lineups this week. I absolutely love him. The surprise of the week in my book, I didn't have him highly ranked amongst the freshmen. I didn't know he was this good. But after his performance, 17 carries, 104 yards, 6.1 yards a carry, Matt, against UC Davis. He had 2 receptions, Matt, and a touchdown. Jaden Ott is over 200 pounds. He has the profile of an NFL big back. Now, California is not a place that we're looking for college fantasy football backs very often. But I think Ott is the exception to the rule here. He plays UNLV. UNLV is not very good. They're at home. They're a big favorite. If I'm the coach, Mitch or Justin Wilcox, I want to get Ott moving. I want to get him confidence. I want him to be ready for the spotlight. He also plays Notre Dame the next week. I've got to get Ott. I'd love to start him with back-to-back 100-yard games. Get this big back confidence. Let him feel like he can play at the NFL level. Matt, go get Jaden Ott. I might not start him against Notre Dame, but the rest of the year in the Pac-12, I like the matchups, and I like a lot this week against UNLV. Who was going to be the number 2 wide receiver in Alabama? This is a golden ticket spot. for the last 5 years, other than the year where Jalen Waddle got hurt and basically Devonta Smith won the Heisman. They've had 2 productive wide receivers in this system, in this passing game. We know Jermaine Burton is a star. I was surprised, and much of the college fantasy football universe and college universe said, how is Trayshawn Holden being escalated above all of these 5-star recruits and a transfer from Louisville for the Crimson Tide? Well, you know what, Matt? We got our answer. Trayshawn Holden is great. I mean, it's really just as simple. Nick Saban and the coaching staff knew what they saw on the practice field. They knew they had a talent. 5 receptions for 70 yards and 2 touchdowns. I don't expect double-digit touchdowns. But, Matt, if I'm getting that many targets for that many yards against any team, he plays Texas. And I'm going to be kind. In recent years, Texas has been defensively challenged. My friends, if you watch Texas football, they're terrible in the back end. They're awful. I mean, Alabama might just throw the ball 50 times against the Longhorns. Why run it? Throw it to Jamar Gibbs and throw the football. Now, they're not going to, but I'm being serious. They're going to throw the football. Trayshawn Holden is a must-acquire fantasy football asset. Go get him. The number 2 receiver in Alabama is far too valuable. And then my luckiest play in DFS. I saw that Brandon Bolden was injured, I think, last Saturday morning. And I updated Reese White as my Fantastic Four on the night slate, Matt. And it was salary related and injury related. I didn't go get Reese White in season long. Matt, 21 carries, 133 yards, 2 receptions, 3 total touchdowns. Bingo. I don't think Bolden is playing this week. I've been searching all around.
Braden Bennett.
I'm sorry, Evan. What did I say?
You're ready for some Las Vegas NFL action there.
Yes, I was thinking about NFL all day. That's a whole different story. Sorry, Braden Bennett. I don't think he's playing. I can't find it anywhere. They host Webb. They're going to destroy Webb this week. Reese White is going to get the touches if he's available on the waiver wire, which I still believe he is in most leagues. Go get him. Matt, that's my Fantastic Four. Who are yours?
All right, starting off here with the cover image for those watching on YouTube, it's Todd Centeio. If you're listening, just picture the beautiful purple and gold of James Madison. The quarterback led them to their first FBS victory. John, a 100% career win percentage for the Dukes at the FBS level. They took down Middle Tennessee last week, and now they get to head on to Norfolk State here. Centeio passed for 287 yards and 6 touchdowns. Yes, 6 touchdowns. And John, he ran the ball 14 times for 110 yards. Absolutely fantastic quarterback. I think some folks might have thought, he was just Middle Tennessee, but Middle Tennessee's been bowl eligible the last couple of years. And that's the type of competition that the Dukes are going up against each and every week. I think people know about the wide receiver Chris Thornton a little bit more, so he didn't quite register for sleeper play. But I went and absolutely bid on Todd Centeio anywhere I could. I'm excited to watch him throughout the season. And John, we alluded to him earlier, but it's running back E.J. Smith. 11 attempts for 118 yards. He averaged almost 11 yards a carry and 2 touchdowns. Stanford didn't really need him very long against Colgate, but they will need him against USC. It would not surprise me if he got 20 plus carries. So although he is a little bit more of a household name, most folks know he's Emmitt Smith's son. I think the narrative has been very quiet on the Stanford running game and offense in general the last couple of years, but I think the Cardinal are going to look to I hate to say it, establish the run early, right? And give Tanner McKee some space to play with. And John, how about Charlie Jones from Purdue? Everybody was guessing, who is stepping up for Purdue? Who is stepping up for the Boilermakers? Is it going to be Brock Thompson? That's actually who I thought was going to be the next man up. And, was it just going to go through Payne Durham, the tight end? No, it's Charlie Jones, the old buddy of Aiden O'Connell. So Charlie Jones transfers into Purdue because he's buddies with Aiden O'Connell, and the chemistry was there right away. Purdue went to the wire with Penn State, and it was in big part because Charlie Jones had 12 receptions for 153 yards. And again, against Penn State, who do they get this week? Indiana State. So Charlie Jones should see double-digit targets by halftime here, and he might have to ride the pine the second half, but I think Purdue will do enough. And remember, Purdue's not that explosive, so they could dominate Indiana State and only be up 3 scores. The starters might play well into the third quarter, even if it does look like a blowout. And then I went into the flex, John. I leaned into it. I took a tight end so we could talk some tight ends here. And I'm talking about Luke Musgrave from Oregon State. 6 receptions, 89 yards against Boise State last week. He was a very popular pickup on my waiver wires. I know I missed him on the Kings Classic. I got outbid on him. I was not thrilled about that. But Musgrave is going to be a name to know moving forward. John, he got 6 receptions last week. No other player got more than 3 on his team, and in total there was 15. So he really dominated from the tight end perspective. Oregon State looks good. They look crisp, they look balanced, and they look like they're willing to throw the ball as much as the Beavers are ever willing to throw the ball. So there we go. That's both of our fantastic fours here, and we're going to go ahead and jump into our best bets. I lied. We're actually going to our DFS segment. I just really wanted to play the best bets clip here. John, we're going to go ahead and start with your DFS Fantastic Four. So we like to give 2 different angles to this. John gives a foundation of 4 guys to build from. On DraftKings, I'll also be giving a full DraftKings lineup to kind of round that out. So John, go ahead and run us through your Fantastic Four here.
I think the algorithm is broken. Matt, how can Mike Wright be 5,400?
That's a free play.
He has averaged 45.7 points on DraftKings. Even in a bad outing, what is he going to get? 25, 27 points? I mean, the floor is so high with his legs. If he gets 100 yards rushing, they're going to be playing from behind. The over-under is exceedingly high. You know the Commodores have to score to keep up with Wake Forest. And Matt, they're home. I love Mike Wright here. I have him as my starting lineup quarterback. I don't care if he's 60% owned in cash game. Matt, I'm playing him. Let me beat the other 40%. Like, there's just no way I'm not playing him. Absolutely loved him. And then, Matt, I was also absolutely perplexed here. Braylon Allen is like the 9th most expensive running back. I get he's not a big PPR machine, but Matt, last I looked, touchdowns matter. It's the Derrick Henry argument. For so long in DFS, I heard NFL DFS players say, I'm not taking Derrick Henry because he doesn't catch passes. Man, he was like the 4th most expensive running back with the 3 touchdown upside, with 150-yard rushing upside. I played Derrick Henry tons before he was injured over the last 2.5 seasons. I didn't care about it. Yes, of course we all want Saquon Barkley with 6 reception upside. But I'll take 135 yards rushing and 2 or 3 touchdowns every week from Braylon Allen, and you get the 3-point bonus if he exceeds 100 yards rushing. Give me Braylon Allen at $7,000. Gives me salary cap flexibility. Now I'm going to hit up that Texas Tech Houston game. So I'm going to go 2 wide receivers in here. Bradley, the reports were glowing in the summer. Hey, I've got Miles Price on fantasy teams. I'm still starting Miles Price. But the one thing we've learned in Zach Kitley's offense is this offense can support 2 fantasy stars at wide receiver. It looks like Jerron Bradley is going to be one of them. 6 receptions, 108 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Might be fickle with the 2 touchdowns, but Matt, with those targets and that yardage, I'm taking Bradley at 6,000 here. And who I'm going to pivot, I mentioned it. Nathaniel Dell is by far the best, Matt. When they needed him, he caught 2 touchdowns. They should have targeted Dell more. I watched that whole game. I don't know why Dell was not targeted enough. Absolutely love him here. He's only 6,000. He should probably be like a 7,200 price receiver. Last week, Matt, he was 7,800. Nathaniel Dell went down 1,800. I'm taking him. This adds up to only 24,400. You get $6,650 per average of the other 4 players. Love this fantastic 4. Matt, who do you have in your lineup this week?
All right. So, John, we agree. Houston is way underpriced. I had a great week last week, more than doubled what I put in. And a big part of it was I was in on Houston. Clayton Tune got cheaper. So I absolutely plugged it right in. 6,300. Yeah, absolutely. And, not every week I'm willing to put an emphasis on the running back position, but I felt the pricing was good on the running back position here. And at 7,300, I'm starting off my running backs with Bijan Robinson. And yes, I know he's playing Alabama. Yes, I know Texas is going to have to throw the ball because they're going to get down early. But what everybody forgets about Bijan Robinson is that he is just as good of a receiver as anybody on that team minus Xavier Worthy. And that is not a knock, right? So Bijan Robinson will be involved in the passing game. At 6,300, you're getting one of the best players in college football. It's a little bit of a risk anytime you put a stud up against a stud defense, but at 7,300, I'm not willing to do an overweight exposure to Bijan Robinson, but in this lineup it worked. And we also then have Deuce Vaughn coming up. We know Deuce Vaughn is going to be well fed in each and every week, but Kansas State's got a pretty solid matchup against Missouri. Missouri was the worst run defense in the country last year. I haven't seen anything that suggests they won't be, in a bottom tier program again in that way. So Bijan Robinson, Deuce Vaughn are going to be my running backs in that proper slot. Working down the line here, I'm saving money at the wide receiver position, starting with Brew McCoy. Brew McCoy, 5,300. So he's right there, right with Jalen Hyatt. You could swap him in if you want. I'm going to go with Brew McCoy because I believe Tennessee wants him to be more involved than they want Jalen Hyatt to be, just based off skill set. It's not a knock on Hyatt at all, but I think Tennessee is working McCoy into being more of a featured guy there. And so I'm going to go for him at 5,300. That felt pretty cheap for me. We talked about Tennessee's the second highest over under of the week. And John, how about Michael Mayer down here at 3,900? And for folks who don't know, Michael Mayer, you could slide the tight ends into the wide receivers on DraftKings. So Michael Mayer at 3,900, he's the highest projected tight end of the week. Just kind of generally speaking, Notre Dame has an excellent matchup against a lesser opponent. I think they're going to let Tyler Buckner a little bit loose, let him shake off a tough week 1 matchup. I don't think Notre Dame's going to be playing as tight as they were last week. And at 3,900, Michael Mayer is a really good play here. I went with the Houston offense as well. I love that stack. And that Tune Golden stack worked for me last week. I'm going right back to it. Here's what's risky about any Houston wide receiver. They're all boomer bust guys. They're big plays. That's how it works. So there's always a little bit of risk. So I'm going to lower my risk factor there by taking the 4,300 versus the 6,000. But either guy there is a good play. And then we saved money at wide receiver. Well, where's that money going? It's going right back in that flex spot. It's Braylon Allen for me. No need to explain that. John did a great job. And then I always am going to prioritize another quarterback in my super flex spot. And my most expensive play, it's going to Hendon Hooker. We talked about it. Second highest over under. I've got my stack with Brew McCoy. I'm feeling very happy about this DFS lineup. And now, John, we'll do best bets. All right, wrapping up here with our best bet segment. Me and John go through 1 point spread, 1 over under, 1 money line. We play each of these games ourselves each week. We are both 2-4 so far. Remember, We are battling for the sad Husky UConn shirt here. The winner gets the honor of receiving the sad Husky UConn shirt. So this is a vicious competition. John, I know, we started off a little rocky here. That's to be expected early season, but also, my goodness, have I gotten the bad beats? I had Utah money line last week. That came down to the last freaking play. Kent State hung in. They only lost, they almost covered there. They almost backdoor covered against Washington. So we're riding out these early season L's here, and we're going to get right back to it here. Your point spread pick is Liberty plus 6.5.
Matt, I love the group of 5 for value. I love home underdogs. Liberty last week went to Southern Miss and they won in 4 overtimes, 29-27. They're playing Alabama Birmingham. I don't think Alabama Birmingham is all that good. And you're giving me almost a touchdown? I'll take the home dog here. I like the Flames a lot. They can put points on the board. If you want to sneak a wide receiver, Demario Douglas is very interested, everyone. I picked him up on 2 college fantasy football teams this week. I like him a ton. Then, Kent State is going to Oklahoma. Matt, this game opened up at like 64.5. And Oklahoma, let me see. I want to get how big of a favorite. I forgot here. They are a massive favorite. That's why we didn't
highlight. Like 40, if I remember.
33.5 point favorite.
They dropped a little.
So that's why we didn't highlight it here. 72.5. Matt, Oklahoma might be out to a 28-31 point lead. They're going to pull the dogs off. I don't know how much Kent State's going to be able to score on the road here. 72.5 seems too high. 64, 66. Maybe I go with the over. 72. So people have been pounding the over. I'll go under. The Sooners pull the dogs off here. I'm going to take it. Now, I was 0-2. People, I've been losing. I want to win. That's what I'm here for. I did get Old Dominion. I didn't lose as much because they were plus 2.
Old Dominion.
I did. They were plus 230. So I should have been down more, but I got a little bonus there. But I want to win. I think the Cougs traveling to Texas Tech, I think they're going to win. This is a revenge game. Matt, last year, Houston opened up and got pounded by Texas Tech. I think it was like 38-21. I know you don't play the narrative, but I saw Houston play UTSA. They were on the road. Houston is a battle-scarred team. This is the third year with Holgerson. They can play this game. They're not going to be intimidated. I'm getting plus 135 here. Give me the Cougs on the road against Texas Tech at plus 135. Matt, who are your best bets?
John, the theme here is overcorrection. I'm looking for overcorrections from week 1, and I'm starting it here with point spread. Kentucky, we have our graphic 5.5, but I actually nailed Kentucky plus 6 here. The Kentucky Wildcats getting 6 points against Florida 2 weeks ago would have been a smash play. This is an overcorrection from Florida. Yes, they hung in tight. They played a good game. They won a game in the Swamp. Yes, Kentucky has to travel to the Swamp. Maybe Florida wins this game, but against Kentucky's tough defense, the way that they play, and guess what? Kentucky is going to contain Anthony Richardson a little bit more than Utah is able to do. Anthony Richardson, I'm sure, will still be good. They'll still be able to run the ball, and maybe Florida still wins, but are they going to win by 6 points? I don't know. I don't see that. I'm going Kentucky here. Another overcorrection point. Over under. UCF Louisville, 61.5. UCF Louisville, 61.5. UCF came out. I believe UCF hung a quick 40 and just chilled the rest of the week last week. John Rice Plumlee looks legit. That UCF passing attack is clicking. And I know this over-under is sitting here because Malik Cunningham and the Louisville Cardinal came out flat against a Syracuse team that folks had low expectations for. But if Malik Cunningham, even finds the end zone 3 times, that should be enough to push this over. 61.5 UCF Louisville over under. I'm feeling great about that one. And what's going on with here? Boston College plus 120. I had to make sure I was doing the math right here on the money line. Boston College is going to Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech, who just lost to the aforementioned Old Dominion, that's been in the FBS for 3 years, and no knock on Old Dominion. They're on a win streak. They're hot, but they're Old Dominion. And yes, I know Boston College lost to Rutgers, but Boston College looked rusty against Rutgers. Virginia Tech looked bad. Again, they looked outmatched. They looked outcoached against Old Dominion. I'll take rusty. Give me Zay Flowers. Give me Boston College to go into Blacksburg and get a W against Virginia Tech. Neither program's in a good spot, but I think Boston College is in a better spot, and I'm willing to lean into that overcorrection. I hope you continue to lean into our weekly slate previews each and every week. We appreciate it. I saw a lot of views coming in here on YouTube. I appreciate everybody listening as well. Like I mentioned, patreon.com/rookiebigboard. Check out all of those resources. And as always, we appreciate you checking out this episode of the Rookie Big Board.